Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for the civil services preparation, UPSC, KPSC and other relevant examinations. Before we start with our today's analysis, we have a quick gentle reminder. As you all know, we have been conducting a test series for those of you who are preparing for the CTI, PDO and the KAS exam. This test that we are conducting is available both on the offline pattern as well as on the online pattern. The third test as part of this test series will be conducted on 10th of December 2023, and do note this is free. All that you have to do, link will be given in the description box, fill in the necessary information and you would be able to take up this test free of cost only for the first 4-1. So what is that you have to do? Link will be given, subscribe so that you can answer all these questions, know what are the type of questions that will be asked, and you would be able to successfully achieve your goal as well. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says the role of Special Inquiry Committee of the Parliament. The article here is speaking about the Ethics Committee of the Parliament of India. First, we have to understand what is the Ethics Committee. Second, what we will understand is the role performed by it, what are the privileges committee, and what is the punishment that can be imposed on a member of parliament. Will they have any other options to explore in case there is expulsion that is imposed on these individuals? First, we have to understand what is this ethics committee. As a member of parliament, what is a member of parliament's role? A member of parliament will basically be elected by the people of the respective constituencies. So let's say, for example, I am contesting from one of the districts in Karnataka, which happens to be Bangalore North. No, I'm not contesting, I'm just giving you an example. Let's say I'm contesting from Bangalore North, which happens to be one of the constituency. So in Bangalore North, people of Bangalore who have registered their names in the electoral roll, they would be able to vote for me, and ultimately let's say I become an MP in the Bangalore North. After I become an MP, I represent the people of Bangalore North where in the parliament, and in this particular moment I have to maintain certain decorum. Why? Because I am a member of parliament. There are certain rules, regulations, privileges that are accorded to me, and at the same time I have to sustain that decorum and value the viewpoints that has been given to me by the parliament as well as by the people of that particular constituency. What if I violate these privileges that are given to me? What if I don't maintain the moral standards that is required of me as a parliamentarian? In that particular case, what would happen? A person, another MP in the parliament, can give a notice or can ask the parliament to consider what? Consider that this person who is appointed as a member of parliament is not following a certain decorum, is not following the ethics of the parliament, is not following the moral standards that have been established, and as a result there has to be an inquiry that has to be conducted, and immediately after that the speaker will prima facie look into it, and if this request is accepted, then it will be sent to the ethics committee. The ethics committee will look into it, and ultimately they will also impose with a punishment as well. So the punishment will basically be expulsion, it will be a warning, it will be a temporary suspension, so on and so forth, that is present. So the ethics committee of Lok Sabha is believed to have recommended expulsion of the Trinamool Congress member who happens to be Moima Motra, the Lok Sabha, for her unethical conduct and the breach of the privileges. This follows the ethics committee examining the complaints which accused her asking questions to target a business house at the behest of a businessman in exchange for a cash. Ideally, there is a member of parliament, they are not supposed to be corrupt, they are not supposed to go away from the moral standards established. If at all they go away from the moral standards established, they can be inquired by the ethics committee. So the ethics committee was constituted in 2000 to oversee the moral and ethical conduct of members and examine cases of unethical conduct referred to it. The committee examines complaints filed against members of the house by other members, outside through a member, or referred by the speaker. So who can actually file a complaint? It can be filed by any member of the parliament or even by the outsiders through a member, or it can be referred by the speaker himself as well. So the committee makes a prima facie inquiry before deciding to examine a complaint and presents its report to the speaker. So the minute the speaker has given it, or there is a member who has given it to the speaker and the speaker has asked the recommendation of the ethics committee, the ethics committee will prima facie look into whether this particular content has any value in it. On the face of it, do we have to go and investigate about it? So they primarily take a cognizance of this entire issue and ultimately support this particular claim. So what is that we have to do? We have to first take up this recommendation given by the ethics committee only if there is prima facie case. So if there is no prima facie case in this particular case, it will stop at that particular moment. Ethics committee will not further investigate. But on the face of it, look of it, it looks like there has been a violation of certain ethics or the morals that have been established. A certain decorum has been violated. That is when the ethics committee will pick up this particular case. So basically, the committee makes a prima facie inquiry before deciding to examine a complaint and places its report to the speaker, who places it before the House for consideration. It must be noted that the term unethical is not defined. So what is unethical is yet not defined. It is very subjective as per the discretion of the ethics committee. It is left to the committee to decide whether any act is ethical or not. In 2007, an MP accompanying his close female companion, impersonating her as his wife, was considered unethical. So there have been examples where a certain other person was acting like a wife of a member of parliament. This was seeming like an unethical concept, and as a result, that person was also suspended. So what are the privilege committees? The privilege committee or special inquiry committee examines the accusations of against a member. In 1951, a special committee found a member guilty of promoting a business interest by putting questions in return for financial benefits. It was again a special committee that inquired into cash query scam of 2005, where 10 MPs of Lok Sabha were recommended for expulsion. So what is expulsion? So this person will be asked to leave the house and will not be allowed to attend the proceedings of the house. So if a person is not allowed to enter the house, he will not be allowed to be part of the proceedings of the house. That is what is called as expulsion. So the Constitution under Article 101 lists down the grounds for vacation of a seat by an MP. It includes voluntary resignation. So for example, if I am an MP, if I have to not be part of the parliament, or if I am suspended from being parliament, or one of the grounds as to disqualification of the member of the parliament, it includes voluntary resignation. I on my own resign. I am going to say to the speaker that I don't want to continue as an MP. I write a resignation and ultimately present it to the speaker. So there is voluntary resignation, and it further includes disqualification and continuous absence from the house of the 60 sittings. So in case I am not able to attend the parliament for more than 60 sittings continuously, and I am not even given any excuse, I have not asked what is the issue, I have not been part of these proceedings for about 60 days, even in that case I may be disqualified or vacated. So expulsion is not explicitly in the Constitution. So you might also have a question in your preliminary examination: is ethical word used by the ethical committee mentioned in the Constitution of India? No. The second question that they ask is, under 101 or 102, expulsion is defined under the Constitution? No, it is once again not defined. However, the Supreme Court has provided conflicting judgments in this regard. What are these judgments? In Raj Ram Paul versus Honorable Speaker, it upheld the power of the Parliament to expel its members for breach of privilege by interpreting Article 101 to include expulsion. So the Supreme Court has given a conflicting viewpoints. What are these conflicting viewpoints? On one side, it said that the Parliament has the power to allow a member to be expelled. That is one. In the other, in Amarendra Singh versus Special Committee Punjab Vidhan Sabha, the Supreme Court held expansion by the State Assembly as unconstitutional. It held that serious scenarios would frustrate the objectives of the parliamentary democracy. So whenever there are conflicting viewpoints that exist, you would have is a higher bench which will look into that particular matter and ultimately give a conclusion. So if there are two conflicting viewpoints, there are two judges who have given one viewpoint, there are other two judges who have given conflicting viewpoint. In that particular case, a 3-judge member would be appointed. They will ultimately give a conclusion, and this will hold the presidential value. This will hold the binding value where all the high courts are supposed to follow the rule games that have been established by the Supreme Court of India. So how to reconcile privileges of the House? The allegations of the cash for query against Moitra are serious in nature. How can expulsion for such an action be disproportionate? It is very subjective. So let's say, for example, if at all she is expelled, then what are the likely consequences and the ramifications? People have elected her. She is representing her constituency. She would not be able to voice out the concerns of her constituency. That's a major issue. What if there is an emergency and some urgency is required? Her presence is required for her constituency so that she can voice her opinion. She would not be able to voice her opinion. So therefore, it must be noted that the parliamentary committee proceedings are not as detailed as a judicial case that is conducted as per the Evidence Act. Even in this case, the ethics committee is believed to have recommended legal inquiry, and the CBI has already registered a preliminary inquiry. So when it comes to the judicial process, you have a procedure that is laid. You also have rules that have to be followed. But in this particular case, there is no such rules. But the prima facie, if they feel that there is a case, they have their own set of rules on the basis of which they inquire and investigate, and ultimately suspension or expulsion or temporary termination of the membership can also be done by the ethics committee. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says navigating the U.S. China relationship. What is this article speaking about? The article here is speaking about the economic relationship between China and United States, the political relationship between USA and China, and ultimately there is a cause of concern between these two countries, and if it escalates further, there could be issues that would be surfacing for the global world community. Is what is this article all about? Recently, we had the US President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping who held a summit. Why was this summit held? That is because on the political front, there were a lot of issues, and similarly on the economic front, there were a lot of issues. In order to address it, to recoup this entire issue and to also have and enter into talking terms with each other, the US and China have, that is the presidents of US and China have come together, and now they have attended a meeting. What was the whole issue behind China and United States of America escalating political crisis? There were a couple of issues that we have to look into. You had the President of United States of America who had once said that if at all there are Chinese exports that are happening with respect to China to United States of America, that has to be cut. Then there were allegations of 5G which was being tested by the Chinese company Huawei, and this particular Huawei company was also listening, and they also have planted some tools, equipments into the phones as well as the laptops, such that this information would be collected by the Huawei and will be ultimately given it back to Chinese government. So these were the allegations that have been made. Whether it is right or wrong is not the point here. The point is that an allegation was made against a Chinese company. And added to it, we know for the fact that China has a simple principle, that it says that Taiwan is officially a part of China, and what we believe is in one China policy, which means that Taiwan is not an independent country per se, but Taiwan is also part of the mainland China. So every country will have to accept it and follow it and ultimately implement the policy as well. But what has United States of America done? United States of America basically believes that mainland China has communism principle. It has a policy which is dictated by the People's Republic of China. On the other side, in Taiwan, What they have is democracy. Does communism and democracy can it come together? No. What you have is a single political party in the form of Communist Party of China in the mainland China, which does not allow democracy to function. So Taiwan is one of the areas where, if you go back to the 1949s and prior to that as well, what you had was a clash between democracy and communism. So people who wanted to support democracy were all ultimately shattered out. So this pocket of people who were supporting democracy ultimately laid their foundation in Taiwan. So Taiwan has a representative government. It also has democracy. But in China, there is only one government, and that happens to be the Communist Party of China. So what is the major issue here? China basically believes that this Taiwan which is present is part of the mainland China. But Taiwan says, no, we are not part of mainland China. We have an independent country, and that is Taiwan in itself. So this is a conflict between mainland China as well as Taiwan. So United States of America is now supporting Taiwan, and it has been supporting Taiwan for a very long period of time. Why does it support Taiwan? That is because Taiwan believes in the principles of democracy. And when it comes to United States of America, it always espouses this very thought of let's say, for example, this idea or the principle of democracy. So in order to support democracy and in order to show faith for those people who also believe that United States of America is a torchbearer of democracy, so United States of America supports Taiwan all the time. So what exactly happened? Recently we had the Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of U.S. House of Representatives, who made a controversial visit to Taiwan in August 2022, the first visit by a speaker in 25 years. And most recently, we also have House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who received Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen in April in California, the highest American official to do so on the U.S. soil. And as a result, what China feels is that since United States of America is supporting Taiwan, this is not acceptable for China. Since United States of America is supporting Taiwan through the Taiwan Relations Act, this is not acceptable for China. So China basically believes it is violating the sovereignty of China by you discussing these things with Taiwan and not recognizing one China policy. It is violating the fundamental laws of the Chinese governance pattern, says China. So number of discussions did take place, but United States of America continues to support Taiwan, and as a result, there is not good relationship between China as well as United States of America. Because of this relationship, they were ideally supposed to have military to military contact, discuss on the military front. They have to prevent escalation of the ties, but that did not happen. They did not have any communication whatsoever. Military communication had stopped for a very long period of time, and now because of the meeting between US President Joe Biden and Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, they have now restored military to military communication between the two nuclear weapon states, critical to prevent potentially catastrophic miscalculations. So if one country says something, the other country will obviously come up with something else, and ultimately this could have sabotaged the entire relationship. And as a result, to prevent it, what they have taken up is this discussion in the form of a meeting. Military Maritime Consultative Agreement was started in the year 1998, basically to ensure that there are military level talks that are prevalent between USA and China and to further prevent escalation of the ties. This is on the political front. Added to it, there is something on the economic front as well, that is to do with trade related aspects. We know for the fact that China happens to be the manufacturing hub. When you had the presidency of Donald Trump, what did Donald Trump say? China's expectation is that it is able to export a lot of things to other countries, but United States of America's exports to China has dropped over a considerable period of time. So this ultimately means China's exports to United States of America is increasing. United States of America's exports to China has been decreasing. So Donald Trump had basically said that we have to keep a close check on the number of products that are coming from China. He had also imposed taxation as well as tariffs on the products that are emanating from China as well. This was not taken up lightly by China. Why? Because China felt that this is violation of certain rules, that they are imposing these tariffs against the normal World Trade Organization structure. So in June 2021, what China did was it blacklisted 59 defense and surveillance companies under the so-called Chinese military industrial complex. This is in addition to Trump administration blacklisting in 2019 of several Chinese artificial intelligence startups for alleged human rights abuses in the Xi Jinping. Violations in Xinjiang. So this basically happened that in 2019 you had the Trump administration. The Trump administration also felt that we have in Xinjiang, one happens to be a province in China, where there was large scale human rights violations that were being committed. How? For example, they were not given enough amount of food to eat, and for example, the number of hours that they work was also increasing over a period of time. There was no check as well. They were not provided proper sanitary conditions. There was no presence of basic amenities that were given to the people, and as a result the pay that was given to all those laborers who were working in Xinjiang was way too less. That is when United States of America realized that since it was violating the labor laws of United States of America and labor laws were not being respected in China, this has to be kept under check. So as a result, the number of exports from the Chinese company made from Xinjiang, that is the products that were designed or made from Xinjiang, were ultimately closed down. So those products that were coming from Xinjiang would not obviously enter United States of America. That was one thing. Then there was exports of advanced computer chips for the manufacture of the semiconductors. The curbs bar US and non-US firms whose products contain American technology from supplying hardware and software to specific Chinese companies, besides prohibiting American citizens and firms from collaborating with Chinese chip makers except under special condition. So they were not allowed to export the technology or any of the design patterns to the Chinese firm if at all the original Chinese, if at all the original US company is designing that particular project. So if at all there is a USA company which is designing a particular software, in that case they are not supposed to pass any of the information to the Chinese, and at the same time, even if they have to collaborate with the Chinese, special permission would be required on the artificial intelligence front and also on collaborating with the Chinese chip makers as well. On top of the ban on tech exports come the executive order issued by Biden prohibiting US investments in high-tech arena. Let's say for example there is high-tech technology, there should be no collaboration with the Chinese, and at the same time they should not be able to have any collaborations with each other. Exports of various types of graphite, a vital mineral for the production of electric vehicles, was ultimately restricted by China. This ultimately means on one side United States of America is imposing a lot of restrictions on China, so China also started reciprocating back. You impose a certain tariffs, we will also impose a certain tariff. So there was friction, there was animosity, there was antipathy towards each other, and ultimately this led to the economic war zone that was created between USA and China. And similarly, China has hit back in kind, clamping a ban in July on gallium and germanium exports, raw materials used in the production of microchips and weapon system. These are the systems listed in the US inventory of materials critical for economic and national security. So once United States of America imposed certain restrictions on the exports from its side, lack of collaboration, then what we had was reciprocation by China as well, ultimately leading to the problem between both the countries. To sort out these economic and political differences, the presidents of both the countries have met together to sort out these differences. This is what we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Garba dance of Gujarat makes it to the UNESCO list. First we will understand what is this Garba dance. Eventually we will understand which are the other intangible items that we have as part of the UNESCO's representative list, and we will also understand what are the criterion that is followed in order to accommodate this intangible cultural heritage. When we speak about Garba, it happens to be a ritualistic devotional dance performed throughout the state of Gujarat. So it is performed in which state? It is performed in the state of Gujarat and across India. Garba is celebrated for 9 days during the festival of Navratri. This festival is dedicated to the worship of feminine energy or Shakti. The cultural, performative and visual expressions of the feminine energy are expressed through the Garba dance. First important factor, Second important factor is this Garba is now entered into the intangible cultural heritage by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organizations. So it is part of the intangible cultural heritage list, which are the other, let's say for example, elements which are part of this intangible cultural heritage list. We have 14 other, which includes Ramlila, Yoga, Kutiyam, Kutiyatam, then what we have is Mudiyattu, then what we have is Kalbelia, Chowa, Buddhist chanting of Ladakh, Sankirtana, then what we have is traditional brass and copper craft of utensil making in Punjab, Nowruz, Kumbh Mela and Durga Puja in Kolkata. This can be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. One, they can ask you a match of the following question where they will give you one of the dance formats, or they may give you one of the list which is present and in which state it is practiced. One, or you will also have consider the following pairs, and they will also ask you a question which of them is matched incorrectly, or there can be a question which among this is not part of the UNESCO's representative list of the ICH. So you have to remember all these 14 plus now the 15th one. So whenever it is added into that particular list, it means that there is conservation that is required. It includes forms of expression that testify to the diversity of intangible heritage and raise awareness of its importance by enhancing the viability of communities' cultural practices and know-how. UNESCO aims to safeguard the intangible cultural heritage. So because these are the ones which may be losing strength, or many people may not know about it, and also in order to safeguard the rights of the people who are practicing it, it will be added to this particular list. So when we speak about practices, what we have is tangible culture, then what we have is intangible cultural practices. What is tangible cultural practices? Let's say for example, there is a monument, you can touch it, you can feel it, that is what is called as tangible. Generally when you speak about culture, what we always associate is the tangible parts. For example, let's say there is a beautiful temple that is built, or let's say for example, many people from outside the country also entered into the Taj Mahal area. They look at it as a symbol of love as well. So you can touch, feel it, that is tangible. So cultural aspects which deal with touching or feeling it, which you can actually see, the cultural monuments, that is what is called as tangible. And intangible basically means that which you cannot touch. For example, performing art, or for example singing of a song, or for example dance, these are nothing but the intangible ones. So whenever a particular music pattern or a dance pattern has to be introduced, what we have is an intergovernmental committee which consists of representatives from the state parties elected by the General Assembly. The committee meets annually to evaluate nominations proposed by the state parties to the 2003 convention and decide whether or not to inscribe these cultural practices and expression, and ultimately from India. This can be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. In India, Sangeet Natak Academy, New Delhi is appointed nodal agency for the implementation of the 2003 UNESCO Convention on safeguarding of the intangible cultural heritage. So only in India, it is the Sangeet Natak Academy which will decide the name. States can make the proposal, and when this proposal is selected by the Sangeet Natak Academy, only then it will be submitted to the UNESCO, and if the UNESCO selects it, ultimately it will come to a conclusion and it will be added into this list. These are some of the important pointers from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Google unveils Gemini, a AI tech trained to behave like humans. So this article here is speaking about artificial intelligence tool called as Gemini, which happens to be AI model trained to behave in human like ways that is likely to intensify the debate about technology's potential promise and perils. We have heard a lot about ChatGPT, so on and so forth. Similarly, what the Google has done is now come up with a new tool called as Gemini. So this has three different there are three categories of Gemini. One is Gemini Nano, then what we have Gemini Pro, then what we have is Gemini Ultra. The Gemini Nano model size is designed to run on smartphones, specifically the Google Pixel 8. It's built to perform on-device tasks that require efficient AI processing without connecting to the external servers, such as suggesting replies within the chat applications or summarizing the text. That is the first one. Then what we have is Gemini Pro, running on Google's data centers. Gemini Pro is designed to power the latest version of company's AI chatbot Bart. It's capable of delivering fast response times and understanding complex queries. So for all those of you who require answers to writing a code, or for example a mathematical model, what you will have is Gemini, which will be able to answer all the queries. Then what we have is Gemini Ultra, still not available for widespread use. Google describes Gemini Ultra as its most capable model, exceeding current state of art results on 30 of 32 widely used academic benchmarks used in large language model research and development. It's designed for highly complex tasks and is set to be released after finishing its current phase of testing. These are some of the important parameters that we have to remember from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, move away from colonial mindset, encourage use of Bharatiya languages, says NCERT. So this article basically goes on to say that in a brief, what is that, if I have to simplify, is this can become a fodder for your mains answer writing. So we have the NCERT, which has gone on to say that apart from learning the foreign languages, what you can also teach is the Bharatiya languages to the students in the country. So it lays its emphasis to the Bharatiya languages. It is not one language, but it is basically about all Indian languages, the Bharatiya languages, and ultimately it is this culture that has to be introduced to the general public and also to the students especially, so that they can learn the information. It is easily acceptable, they would be easily able to understand, and subsequently what we will have is a future generation who would be able to be Bharatiya in style as well as in blood, is what is this article all about. So it's a recommendation that is being made by the NCERT. So if at all there is a question about language and its usage, then make use of this statement made by NCERT, which said that we have to move away from the colonial mindset, basically to encourage the Bharatiya languages. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.